The first thing we want to do, if we look at authentication, there's this web setup button here. And we live in fancy React land. We are better than script tags. We don't need those in our lives, but we do want to grab this configuration over here. And you might be like, should I be committing my API key to client-side code? It's fine. Trust me. We're going to secure the database with rules. And then if you need to do like admin access with like a true API key, there's a secret API key that you can get somewhere else. This is the one that basically, when this client-side application that you are sending out to your users, not unlike an iOS or an Android app, it needs to know what Firebase project it is associated to. So we can get this. We can take this, we can put it in our client-side code base, we can send it to users. It is totally OK. We will secure our database through other means. So it's not like they can just send willy-nilly calls like, oh yeah, cool, I'll open up the developer tools and get Firebase and like go ahead and do stuff, right? Like no, like we will have that thing locked down. Not at first, but eventually we will lock it down. So it is safe to ship this. So let's go ahead and copy that. There is this copy button here, but I'm going to just take the pieces I need because I don't need all the rest of this. And I'll go into Visual Studio Code. And in my source directory, I'm going to make a new file called firebase.js. The reason I create this file is there's a whole bunch of like minor configuration that I'm going to want to do to Firebase. So rather than kind of have it all over my code base, I'm just basically going to do it all in one place and then export the stuff that I need. This is also, in larger projects, I find this really useful to put other like helper functions in there. Like we're going to write most of our Cloud Firestore queries by hand everywhere, but like for like more common things, I tend to like create functions that will go ahead and like, all right, let me just get, it'll be like get all posts, and like that's just a function that will do the right thing for me, so on and so forth. We're not going to do that because we want to practice writing and get really familiar with it. I don't want to abstract it away too fast. But in a kind of larger application, I am very lazy and don't want to type that stuff more than I have to. So I tend to use this as a place for a lot of my like abstractions and stuff along those lines. So one thing we will do is we will import Firebase from Firebase/app. Now, you could do import Firebase from Firebase, and you will get a like polite console warning. It's not a console error. It's just a console warning. It's in yellow, saying like, hey, maybe you don't want to do this. The difference between doing Firebase and Firebase/app is if you just do Firebase, you are going to get everything. You're going to get the JavaScript code for the database, the JavaScript code for the authentication, the JavaScript code for messaging, the JavaScript code for maybe a whole bunch of stuff you're not using, which is going to make your bundle bigger than it needs to be. Right? So there's nothing stopping you from doing this except like just why be hostile to your users if you don't need to. So we'll do Firebase/app, which is just the bare bones, like as much Firebase as you need to get by. And then we'll paste that in. I'm going to change that to a const because I'm a hipster. And we've basically now wired up, we've configured Firebase. The one other thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to export default this Firebase instance, which doesn't really matter, but we're going to export a few other things from this file as well. And solely for demonstration purposes, I am going to attach Firebase to the window object so that if we want to play around with something or if we want to debug, we can just open up the developer tools and play with it. Like this is not a necessarily like best practice that you should do in your application. This is, we're going to be live coding together for a really long time. And occasionally, we might want to poke at stuff and explain stuff. So we'll have this here as well. You could even do, like, if you really wanted to, like a if process.m.nodemv equals development, do this, otherwise don't. You could do fancy stuff like that. We're not going to because we're just going to keep it really simple. Cool. The next thing we want to do is we want to set up Cloud Firestore, because this Firebase, we've effectively configured Firebase and nothing with it, right? Like Firebase without a database or authentication or storage or cloud functions is not much of anything, right? We've just pulled in the core library. We don't necessarily have any of the tooling around with it yet.